There's the issue of immunity. Should a president or a prime minister have immunity according to halacha? Seen this question? And the answer seems pretty clear from the Mishnah. The Mishnah is in the second paragraph of Sanhedrin. It says, Hamelech lo don v'lo daninoso. Lo me'id v'lo me'idinoso. Means the king does not act as judge, and he's also not brought to trial. By the way, that's civil case and capital case. And we also he doesn't testify. He doesn't have anybody testify against him. He's totally immune from the judicial system. Now, why would that be? So the Gemara there says, Rav Yosef says that they're talking about Malchei Yisrael. It means kings not of Malchus Beis David, because Malchei Beis David, there's a pasuk that says that that's their job to act as judges and to be judged. And Reish Lakish also gives the biblical source for such a thing. So then they say, but this must be a rabbinic enactment? Why? They say it's dated to the time of Shimon ben Shetach. Who is Shimon ben Shetach? We're basically going now to the early negative first century. John Hyrcanus was the second Maccabean ruler, the nephew of Judah Maccabee, the son of Shimon HaMaccabee, who was the first Maccabean ruler, and his son was Alexander Jannaeus, Yanai, in the Gemara. And Yanai was already quite off the derech, but his sister was on the derech. His sister was Shimon ben Shetach's. His wife was on the derech. His wife was Shimon ben Shetach's sister. Chazal say Shimon ben Shetach at the time was the head of the Sanhedrin, and Shlomzion HaMalka, Queen Salome Alexandra, which interestingly, her husband was called Janai Alexander, and she also has an Alexander in her name. Well, Alexander Yanai. So Shalom Tziona Malka, she's known because they name a street after her all over the place. I'm very proud. It turns out that they named the original street back in the mandatory time after His Majesty King George V's daughter, Her Royal Highness Queen Mary, Princess Mary, the Princess Royal, I think. Okay, that would be his daughter. The titles. No, I'm saying with a little bit of sarcasm because they give a lot of titles. I happen to know that, but it doesn't. They give out a lot of titles. You know that. It's the strangest thing. But in the olden days, they used to do this too. That's what the Rashbam says. Nebuchadnezzar and Paro used to give people titles. That's what Yosef. What did Pharaoh call Yosef? L'chuel Yosef. You want food? Go to Yosef. But it says that Pharaoh gave him two titles: Avrech and Safnas Paneach. And they do that all the time, and still in royal type places, a person who gets knighted, has to kneel, and then the king or whoever his emissary says, for henceforth you shall be known as, and does the thing with the sword.
I'm surprised that you knew it.
Okay, so no, the Princess Royal is not a specific title. Normally, when a male comes of age, they give him all sorts of titles depending on how close he is to the king. They make him a duke of something, and the earl of something, and the baron of something, and the lord of something, and those titles pass on forever. But if you're just, let's say, a chief rabbi, you just get knighted. And then they give you a barony or whatever it is. The chief rabbi. Chief rabbis have become lords and barons and things like that. So usually the king's daughter gets a title Princess Royal. There's a current Princess Royal now. The current king's sister is also called Princess Royal. Okay, that means like the top princess. Okay, so they named it after Princess Mary, and thank God when they threw off the yoke of the British. When the Israelis threw off the yoke of the British, they changed the name of the street to Shlomzion HaMalka Street. That's what's right next to King George V. I don't think, but they kept King George V Street. That's an iconic street, and they put it right next to Yibadol Livracha, the streets named after David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech. They make a triangle, right? King David Street, King Solomon Street, and King George V Street. Well, not exactly a triangle, but they're right next to each other. I'd rather see King George V Street turned into, I don't know, let's say King Saul Street, unless there is a Shlomo HaMelech Street already, King Rechavam Street, there's a Yechizkiyahu Street already. Other great kings. Is there Yehoshaphat? Yeah. There's good righteous kings for whom we can name streets after. So it says, back to the topic at hand, it says that basically Jannaeus was brought to trial because his own slave was accused of murder, and basically he intimidated people. You have a similar story about Shammai stood up to King Herod before Herod actually took the throne. But the point is that they intimidated. Why did Yanai have to show up even to trial? Because it's the pasuk says that when you are trying an ox for goring a person, the ox is put on trial basically, The ox can't say anything in its defense, but you have to have due process. You can't just kill this. Oh, he gored a person. There has to be due process. And yeah, please. And the ox's owner has to show up at the trial also. So too, when this slave is being tried for murder, the slave's owner, the king, had to show up, and it didn't end up so well. And they basically made a takana from then. This is at least in the Bavli version. They made a takana, which the Rambam paskins like in two places, that from now on we don't judge kings because consider if the king is not a Davidian king. Shimon ben Shetach was at the time, Janaeus was basically a Kohen. If he was legitimately a Kohen, there's a thing that already his own lineage, even though he's descended from Matasyahu, patrilineally, it could be that there was a problem with his mother, or his father's mother, which would make him maybe not a halal, but perhaps not the choicest Kohen to use. Already they had a problem. It says that. It says another Gemara about that. Why? Why what? Kohanim are disqualified because they're mothers.
No.
Okay. So, but the point is, he's a king. He's from Shevet Levi. He's not a Davidian. So this is a takana of Chazal that it used to be in First Temple times. Let's say Achov and Yehu, kings of the 10 tribes, Malchei Yisrael, still acted as judges and could be brought up on trial. But since this first century incident, Second Temple times, Chazal said only Davidians can be judges and only Davidians can be brought to trial. So this is a takana. Therefore, and they say it's kind of dangerous. You look at the Rambam's Perishah Mishnayos, said he paskins this in two places. In Perishah Mishnayos, which is over here. You can read Sanhedrin in the second parak. He says the assumption is that if you have Malchei Beis David, they're tzaddikim. They know what they're doing. And Malchei Yisrael, non-Davidian rulers, are Rishayim. And they basically seize they have a certain illegitimacy to them, let's just say. And then the Kesef Mishnah and others say, how is it? You can't Lu Yitzuyar, a Davidian king who's a Russia, and a Melech Yisrael who's a tzaddik. You can't have such a thing. Agrippus was a tzaddik and kept the Torah, and Chazal were proud of him. He was a Herodian, but he was a king of the Jews. So you had other kings of the Jews who were Davidians who worshipped idols. So why is it the standard like this? And the assumption is they still kept the halacha. Rabbi Victor Miller used to write, even Achav, for all the things he had wrong, whatever else he did, it doesn't say he did this wrong, he kept the Torah. Because the Torah was, it's not that funny. The Torah was the law of the land. It was their culture. Achav, Menashe, for all his wickedness, it says he worshipped idols and he filled the streets of Jerusalem with blood, was a scholar. Except for the bloodshed in the...
Not murder.
No, it says he did both. He filled the streets with blood, it says.
Yeah, but all the things of weird.
Yeah, it says he worshipped idols. The point is he did two of the big bad sins, but the rest, Chazal say, was the end of Mishnah Chelek. Says he was a scholar in his own right. Everything else was kosher. So that's kind of funny. So that's basically what the Ram we assume. If you have a Melech Beis David, he is to be put on trial if he does something wrong. He could be lashed even, but we wouldn't lash him. But either way, we could testify against him. He's brought to trial. But Malchei Yisrael should not be. It's dangerous for us, and we don't do it. Therefore, I think, and many have proposed this already, that you have, let's say, a Bibi today, who's basically a stand-in for the king. Nowadays, the fact that what do? We have a presidential system. We don't have a presidential system. We have a parliamentary system, and the president is a figurehead. That's a very British idea. Now, in the olden days, they used to do this too. Paro basically did with Joseph. I get to be Pharaoh, and I get all the money, and I get all the covet, and you do all the work. You're the Mishneh Lamelech. And a Mishneh Lamelech is mentioned a few places in Tanakh. And the Rambam mentions Mishneh Lamelech, the king, he says, the king himself always says the Mishneh Lamelech. Sometimes the king is does a lot of political work, and he's very involved. And sometimes the king just takes a back seat and puts someone else in charge. That was basically, by the way, the Rambam's describing his own situation. The Rambam was basically the Mishneh Lamelech, with not even by name, in Egypt in his day. He would go to the Sultan's house all day and do everything that the Sultan wanted. He was officially the physician, but the Sultan made him run the country. And like the Abarbanel and like Rabbi Shmuel Hanagid, they basically were the ones who ran their countries for their kings. So nowadays we have it. It's actually in law. The president or the figurehead in Canada, they have two. They have a king, and the king's not even there, so they have a stand-in for the king. They have a governor general who's called a viceroy, or a viceroy is called a governor general, and his job, Canada. And the job of the viceroy, governor general in Canada, is to sit in a nice mansion and make speeches and act all formal and wear a nice suit and tie. And the prime minister has to do all the work. And sometimes you get a prime minister who's actually oppressing the people, is an enemy of his own people. like they have in Canada now. And in America, it's all rolled into one like in the olden days. The king is the president, and he does everything, and he also gets all the covet. So here in Israel, we divide it up. We let Herzog have all the covet and have the nice house, and meet dignitaries and make speeches and unite everybody. And the prime minister is a divisive politician. Okay, but there's nothing new. This has existed a few times in history. So we divide up. Both men would have, let's say, a din of a king, and because neither of them are Davidian kings. Because I don't know, maybe he has a din, but he doesn't. We haven't proved he's a Davidian yet. And I wish, if he was Davidian, I wish he would do the type of things that David HaMelech would do. That would be a lot better. But he's not a David HaMelech. And Herzog is a Levi.
We all Jews. So from Judah.
Okay, no. But we know that Herzog's a Levi.
Yeah.
President Herzog is a Levi,
Yeah.
so he's not a Davidian king. He's basically like a Jannaeus. So both men, talking about both of them, saying that both men, because they're not Davidian rulers, at least the certified Davidian rulers, they should have a legal immunity. They should be immune from prosecution and from standing trial. Why? Because Chazal say so. You have such a situation. It's pretty clear. Like I said, it's Psak of the Rambam. Why doesn't Shulchan Aruch mention it? Because Shulchan Aruch doesn't have Hilchos Melachim. But, so in that case, we default to the Rambam.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.